If you know your tool, you can model efficiently. In this demo, we are going to learn about some basic stuff about our main tool, and that is the Maya. How can we efficiently work inside our tool is to know it. In this demo, I'm going to discuss so many important things that will help you understand the tool better, and it will increase the speed of working inside the Maya. The first important thing whenever you open an application and you start learning that is to know how you can manipulate inside that application, meaning how can you rotate that, how can you pan the shot, how can you orbit around, how can you move and track all of your scene. So this is very important to know about any application before you get into that. So we are going to see how we can navigate inside this application. So if we come here and we click on the polygons and we choose a cube right here, the Maya will automatically create a cube right here. And how can we just orbit around that tool? How can we zoom in and zoom out of this tool? And also, how can we track all this shot around is so important. So this is the basic thing. Navigation is a very basic thing in any tool. That is the first thing you should learn about. So in Maya, we can easily navigate objects around. The main important key is the Alt key from your keyboard. If you hold the Alt key and press your left mouse button, you can orbit around your objects. And if you press the Alt key and hold right mouse button, you can zoom in or zoom out. In the same way, if you hold the Alt key and press the middle mouse button, that way you can track your shot around. So this is so simple. The Alt is the key. The other important thing is to navigate and move your objects around, or even rotate them or scale them. If you take a look here at this toolbox, we have a selection tool. That way, if object is not selected, you select the tool and click, the object is selected. If you see a green cage around the object, that means the object is selected. The other tool is the marquee select. If you have multiple objects in your shot and you select them, all of them at once, you can easily just select the marquee tool and you can marquee around to select. So this is very easy to select. Even you press your right mouse button, hold it and come to select all, and that way you can select all of your objects. But how can you move your objects around? How can you navigate your objects around? And if you select all of your objects and press the delete key from keyboard, that way you can delete the objects. So here is a move tool. If you select the move tool, click your object. This way you can easily move your object around. You get the three axes right here: the z-axis, the x-axis, or even the y-axis. So how can I get back my default view is to come to view, and here is the option default view. That way Maya will come back to a default view in which we have the x-axis on this line and z-axis on this line, and y-axis perpendicular up and down. So we can move on any axis. If we select that, this turns to yellow, that means that axis is selected, so we can move it around. And when one axis is selected, we can't move it onto other axes. But if we come and select this plan, that means we can move on two axes together, y-axis and the x-axis. If we click this, we can move our object around on both of the axes. The same way, if we come here, we can move it on z-axis and y-axis. Same way, if we want to move it together on the z-axis and the x-axis, we can choose this one. The same way, if we want to scale the object, we can scale it on x-axis, on y-axis, on z-axis. And if you press ctrl Z, that will undo the commands. And if you want to scale it on both axes, the y and x, you have to press it, you have to click and select this and move, and while holding your left mouse button you have to move around, and that way the object will scale on both axes together. The same way, if you select it here and do this, the same result you will get along here. And if you want it to move or scale it on 3 axes at once, you have to select this center cube, and this will help you scale it on 3 axis. And it's the same way, if you want to move it around on 3 axis, you can click this center box, and this way you have the free hand to move it all around anywhere. And if you take a look at the channel box is very important. How can you turn on and off your channel box is clicking on this button, and this is a status line, and at the end you see this button. If you click this, you get the channel box. That means if you select all of the 3 channel by just pressing the left mouse button and dragging and type the 0, it will get back to the center of the grid. That means the origin of this grid is set to be 0, 0 on 3 axis. And if you get him back to the scale, and if you select the scale option X, Y and Z, and you type the 1, that will get him back to the default size. So this way we can move around, and the channel box gives us the opportunity to type the values in numbers right here. How can we rotate? Is the same. Select the rotate tool, and that way you can rotate on any axis you want. But if you want him to rotate on 3 axes, you just have to click inside this cube and move it around, and this way you can get and rotate it along any axis. So manipulation and transformation is so important in any tool. You know it before. The other important thing you should know is the pivot point of your object. If we select this cube, we create a cube again, and the pivot point of any object is at the origin of the grid either or in the center of that object itself. If you want to scale this object along the axis like this way, and then if you want to just change the pivot of this, maybe you think of it as a door, and if you want to move it on top of your grid, you can just move it on top of the grid, but now the pivot is set to be in the center. How can we change the pivot point? Press the insert key from the keyboard, and that way you get a new option to change the pivot. I'm going to move it along here and press the insert again, and now you have changed your pivot point from center to this edge. And if you rotate it now, you can see the same way the door is hinged to this edge, and now we can open it or close it. So this is so easy to move your pivot around. Or even you can move your pivot around by just holding the D from the keyboard, and be sure that you have selected the move tool before you set your pivot. Press the D and just hold it, and this way you can just change your pivot to anywhere, and when you are done changing it, just release the D key and you get your pivot fixed here. So this is another important thing, how you fix your pivot. And you have to know your pivot. If your pivot is set to be in the center or onto any other side or edge, if you scale, rotate or move it, it will affect from the pivot point. But if I want it to be fixed on the ground, so I have to press the space bar first and come to render and choose legacy default viewport and come here. By pressing the space bar will help you maximize the view selected. So if you want to choose your pivot to be at the bottom, if you want to set it at the bottom, you can easily press the D key and move it down to the bottom right here, and you let your D key go, and this way the pivot is fixed onto the ground. Now if you scale your object, the base will be fixed. So pivot point is an important option right in any tool. The other important thing is to know how to snap into your tool. If I have an object right here, and if you scale it up something like that, scale him around, I may have to scale it up like this, move him up something like that, and you just scale it on the x-axis as well. And if you want to snap him back onto this grid, meaning at the origin of the grid, and if I want to just snap this pivot point to this edge, how can we do this? I have to select the move tool first and then press the D key and snap to line. If I move it down, it's not snapping to anything, but how can it snap to a line is if you select this option, and hold the D key from the keyboard. This way you can snap it to the line. See, it snaps to the line. And if you let your D key go, it will be fixed onto this edge, the bottom edge. And this way, if you just turn it off back, the snap to curve option. And now if I want this object to be snapped back to this origin point, so easy. Select the snap to grid option, and by just pressing the middlemost button and moving it along, you can just get your object snapped to this center of the grid. So easy. So you can easily snap your objects around by just moving along. And if now the snap to grid is turned on, if you move it, it will jump onto the grid points on each axis where you are just moving it around. So this is so important option that helps you improve your workflow and your speed. What other thing you need? Okay, take another example. If you have a sphere right here and you want to snap the sphere to this point here at any corner point, it's so simple. Select this option is to the point, snap to point option, and middlemost clicking, just move here and you will get him right here. If you select y-axis and you move him along, you will get him here. And one important thing is to be noticed here. If I get him right here and deselect this one, if you move him along, snap to point is turned off now. Turn it off and then move him here. If you move him around in here and place him here. So if I want him to move on 3 axes, you select in the center of this object, and now you select this pivot point, this point, snap to point option turn on, and just pressing your middlemost button and moving your mouse around, it will snap from center to here. But what I just want him to be snapping on y-axis only. Just select the y first, and if you now move him on to anywhere, it will only snap on the y-axis. It won't move on the x or the z-axis. Even if I want to move him here, it's not working. But when I select the x-axis and now I want to snap him here, it will snap. So you can move him. You can just target him onto any axis by just clicking that and then just moving it around. So you see, I selected the z-axis, and when I snapped to here, it only worked on the z-axis. And if I want to select work on the x-axis only, I'll select it first and then I'll move him and it will snap on the x-axis only. So this way you can just target your snaps. So snapping is another important option. What other important option we have here? The most important option of all is to set your project before you start working. You go to File, you choose Set Project, or even if you want to create a new project, you have to create Project window. This way you can name your new project, you name it here, whatever you want to give it, and you have to browse to your location where you want it to be saved, and then let all the other options be on the default and click the Accept. This way you will have your new project onto the location you just selected. And when you are done selecting your project, you can set your project by Set Project option, and you go and you choose your project here. I have created a 3D generalist project here. I'm going to select this and set. Now my project is set to that project. So whatever file I'm going to save it in, it's going to be saved inside that project and in the folder scenes. So this way we can create our projects. This is so much important and very easy option that through which you can create your projects. So what other important options you should know about your tool, or how can you layer your objects down? If you have so many objects in your shot and they are overlapping each other, but you don't want them to be shown in the scene at once, you just want to be on the layers and you keep them visible or invisible in your shot, you have to create the layers. This way I'm going to create 2 layers to keep these objects on the separate layers. So you select this sphere here and you go and here you find in the channel box, if you don't have it turned on, you have to go here and click this one, and that way you get the channel box right here. You select this last option. That means create the layer and put the selected object onto that layer. You just click that and you have your object onto that layer. And if you turn this visibility option off, you see your object will turn off, and if you turn it on back, you will get your object in the shot. And you can name your layers. Just click twice onto this layer and you can name it. Just name it sphere, and _L stands for layer, and you can even choose any color and click save. This way you have the layer name. And if I want this object to be on another layer, but this time I'm not going to select this object, I'm going to create only this layer by selecting this other option. This will create a layer. You can name this layer like box _L, and you just choose any color, save. And now how can I put this object onto that layer? Select the object, right click onto that layer and choose add selected, and this way you have that object on this layer. And if you press, and how can we the other important option, how can we set our shading options? If we press the 4-digit 4 button from the keyboard, you get the wireframe mode, and when you are inside the wireframe mode, you get different colors, the blue and the pink here, and those are coming from the layers. You have selected the color, and those are representing that these objects are on these layers. And if you create another object like this, and if you put it onto this layer, you will have him in the blue color. So this is a very symbolic option that helps you understand what objects are on what layer. So this way you can create your multiple layer. How can you delete your layers? If you select this layer, right click, and you may get an option to delete this layer. But deleting doesn't mean that all of your objects will be deleted. No, the object will still remain in the scene, but the layer won't be there. So creating your layers is another important option. Through this, you can easily manage your shot. Another important option, if you press the 5 from your keyboard, you will get them back into a shaded mode. But if you have applied a texture onto your object, select this object, right click right, and then choose assign new material and assign any of materials. I'm choosing the Lambert, and by just giving it any color or even a material, just go to this option box here and you choose a texture, a checker material from here, and this way you have it on your object, but you won't see it unless you press the 6 key from keyboard, and this way you have your textures turned on. So there are 3 important keys. If you press the 4, you have it in a wireframe. If you press the 5, you have it in a shaded mode, and if you press the 6, you have the texture turned on. So it's another important option about your tool. If you should know your tool better. So what other important things you should know about your tool? If you want to save your file, you have to go to File, Save, and this way you can save your file into your project. So if you want to delete all of them, select all of them and press the delete, but the layer will still be there. If you want to delete the layer, right click and choose delete layer, and this way you will delete the layers. Another important thing that you should know about your tool is how you can manipulate around these options. If you create a polygonal cube, but if you don't find this option right here, how can you get it back? You go to the display menu and you have UI elements here, select this one, and if you turn all of them, so this way you don't have anything into your shot, you adjust this window, the menus right here. So you have to go to display and choose UI, stands for user interface elements, and if you click on this dotted line, this will tear off the menu and it will stay with you. If you want to turn your status line back, you can get, and this is a status line. If you want a shelf back, you have a shelves. If you want your tools back, you get the tool box and you will get your tools back. If you want to get the time slider, that is beneath right here, and if you select the range slider, that's also here. And if you want to turn the command line or even the help line here, or even any option of this channel box or attribute editor, you get them all back here. So this is so easy option, you should know before, because if you don't have anything turned on, you should know how to turn it on back. And even if you don't want this option here and you want quite a space in your work area, you can turn them all off because we don't need them. Right here I'm keeping the toolbox here, I don't need the attribute editor, and even and if you want to change your menu option, if you see here we have set it to surfaces. Here's a list of different menus you can switch between. If you select the animation, you will have all of animation option related to animation. If you select the polygons, you will have some modeling option inside the polygon. This way you can change your category, you can customize your interface. If you're modeling in polygon, you have all of the polygon option here. If you are modeling in nerves, if you select the surfaces, you will have all of the nerves option right here. And if you are even animating, you may select the animation, you will have all of the animation option right here. And the same things, if we take a look at this line and we call it a shelf. A shelf means you have some important option listed down here. Here are the polygon, the same way you select the polygons from here and you get the option. If you choose a polygon from the shelf, you may have some important and mostly used option right here. So if you select the surfaces, meaning the knobs, you have the option. Even the animation or any other category you choose, you may have your options here. And you can create your own shelf right here by just clicking this option and choosing new shelf. And this way you can name your shelf, any shelf here, and you can create a shelf. Let's suppose it's a test shelf right here, and if you click OK, you will have a test shelf here. And you can add any options to your test shelf into this. So this way you get them. And if you want to delete a shelf, you select that and a selected shelf will be deleted from the list. This way you can delete the shelf from the list. And if you want to go back to the polygon, you can just select here and you will be back into the polygons. And there are some important options, you have them all here. So what other important things are here that you should know and you should understand? And those are how you can group your objects together. If you have multiple objects in your shot and you want them all be grouped into one, turn the snap to point off into one group. You can easily do this by selecting all of them, marquee select, and you go to the edit and you have the option group, and the short form is ctrl G. This way you have them grouped into your shot. But if I select the objects, I can individually select all of the objects, even you can move them individually. But if I want to select all of the group, press the up arrow key from the keyboard, and this way you will have your group selected. And now you can move them around in a group. If you want to name your group, you come to the channel box, click here, and you can name it like something, the G1 or anything. Press enter and you have a name here. What other important thing you should know about how you can know how many things you have in your scene is to go to Windows, and here is the option Outliner. If you select the outliner right here, it will show you. Here's a plus sign that shows that there is some group, and if you click this one, it will reveal you all the member of that group. You can select them individually. And if you want your pivot be set in the center of this group, this is so easy. You can go to modify, and here's the option center pivot. This way the pivot will jump into the center of any object. Even if you move objects around and you see and select them in a group, press the up arrow key. Now the pivot is not in the center. And if you want the pivot to be in the center of all these three objects, you go modify and center your pivot, and this way the Maya will automatically put this pivot point into the center of the group. So these are the so important option. And other important option, if you want to ungroup your objects, you select them, go to edit and ungroup them, and this way you won't have them in a group. If you press the up arrow key, they won't be selected as a group. Now you go to Windows, into the outliner and you take a look. Now you don't have any group here. Another important option is the pivot. Is the parent. How can you parent your objects now? If you have an object, maybe I scale it along. It's like the scale. I scale along here, maybe here, and I have something like this. And you click another object, and it's a cone, and place it on top of this cube. And if I want to move this cube, the cone won't move. And if I want that whenever I move the cube, the cone be following that cube is so easy. You select the cone, you press the shift, and then press the box. This way, I have selected the cone first, and then holding down the shift key, I just clicked on the box and go to edit, and you have the option parent. This way, if now I move the cube, the cone has to follow it. Wherever you can place your cone, if I place it here, and if you want to move him with this, the parent does mean the children have to follow, the child has to follow the object, the parent. So if you have multiple children in your shot, so you have to select all of them first, then holding down shift, and you have to press the parent at the end, meaning the last object selected will become a parent object, and all other objects selected before that would be children to that. So this is another important option, and you should know about this option. So this way you can easily manipulate inside your application, your tools. If you want to know more about how to use the Maya, you can watch the lecture from Factor Animation section, and that is Introduction to Maya, and that will help you learn many new things. And we will continue learning about our tool almost in every section. Another last important thing that you should know about your tool is you have every object you create have two modes. One is if you come here and you hover over this button, you see select by object type. That means whenever you click this, you will select all, it will select whole the object. But if you want to select the components of that object, you have the option here. If you select this, and this way you can select the component of the object. Like you select this point, and if you move it, it will reshape the object. So this is selecting by component, and this thing you can easily achieve this option by right clicking and press and keep and your button pressed, and just select any of the option. The edge, so you can select the lines. If you click this in vertex, you can select the points. If you click this in face, you can select a complete face onto your geometrical objects. So these are selecting by components. And if you have it turned on, you can only select in component. And if you want to select whole object, you have to select this option, and this way you will get back to the object mode here. So this is a very important option, and by this you can easily select so many things in a component or even in the object mode, and this is another important option to work with. So I hope you get an idea about your tool, and knowing your tool is always important before you start working inside that.